What is going on, everybody? John Middlekauff, 3 and Out Podcast. Subscribe wherever you may listen. You're watching on YouTube. Make sure you smash that like button. Leave a comment. Leave some thoughts below and subscribe to the channel. As well, download the Amazon AMP app. We are live, all the volumes content all week long, every single week of the year. A lot of stuff out there, so make sure you download that as well. A lot of football thoughts coming up on the draft, on Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love. We will dive into it all. But as you can see, the NBA playoffs is in full swing. The NHL playoffs is in full swing. We're in the second rounds in both. The baseball season's rocking and rolling. Now the sun's out. You want to go to a game? Well, do it on me. Download the official ticketing app of this podcast, 3 and Out, and type in the promo code JOHN, that's JOHN, get $20 off. So get out of your house, go to a game, or you want to go to a concert? You can do that as well. You want to go to a comedy show? I got you. Type in the promo code JOHN. Just go to your app store, download the Gametime app, promo code JOHN, $20 off. Do it. I don't even need a thank you. Just use the promo code and have a good time. I can't recommend them enough. Best ticketing app I've ever used. Gametime, promo code JOHN. Before we get into Rodgers and Jordan Love, because I have a couple quick thoughts there, I wanted to listen. Bryce Young's a polarizing prospect. And typically, unless your name's like Peyton Manning or John Elway, you are going to be nitpicked in the draft process. It's going to happen next year with Caleb Williams. It happened with Trevor Lawrence, right? 2 years later, the Jags have a star quarterback. I mean, people hated Justin Herbert. Patrick Mahomes, people thought he was a scrub. So it's just part of the draft. And whether you are an accomplished college player, whether you didn't play that much in Anthony Richardson, there's going to be a lot of negativity surrounding you leading up to the draft. Then once you get drafted, everything becomes very positive. But I understand why people question Bryce Young. He's small. And for NFL standards, he's tiny, right? And typically, quarterbacks that have success in the NFL are bigger players. Kyler Murray, who, I wouldn't say he's had that much success on the field. He's obviously had a lot of success off it with his contract, but it was very, very easy to see how unique he was. He's literally faster than every player basically in the NFL, and his arm is really, really strong. Bryce Young did not run a 40. Why? Because he's not that fast. I remember when Lamar Jackson refused to run the 40, it really bothered me. Fast players should always run. Why? Because they're fast, and it'll be a positive once there's a 4.32 next to your name. I'll believe till my dying days that if Lamar Jackson, now ultimately he got a massive contract and it all worked out for him, but if he had just ran the 40 coming out of college or at the combine, he would not have fallen till pick 32 because no one's passing on a guy with a 4.3 next to their name with his type tape. But he didn't run. And part of that obviously was impacted by Bill Polian calling him a wide receiver. Bryce Young didn't run a 40. Why? Because he would have ran a 4.8. But his game is not predicated on running around. He keeps plays alive with his legs, but he is not a running quarterback. He's not Kyler Murray. He doesn't play like that at all. He plays like, I'd say like Deshaun Watson. He plays like the Deshaun Watson before he got to the Browns, before all the stuff came out about massage therapists, back when we all thought he was a really sweet quarterback for the Houston Texans. He keeps plays alive behind the line of scrimmage and tries to win from within the pocket. And honestly, in college, Bryce was even a better player than Deshaun, and Deshaun was damn good. But here's one thing I will say. I saw this stat on the interweb, and it's eye-opening. Even though, once you say it out loud, of course, the Georgia defense 2 years ago is widely considered one of the great defenses of all time. And now it has NFL draft status to back it up. They had 14 players over the last 2 years drafted off that defense. Obviously, only 11 players can be on the field at one time. So that means guys that were backups last year were drafted. And 7 of those 14 players were first-round picks. That is going to go down as one of the most accomplished college defenses and one of, obviously, relative with all the guys drafted. It might be unprecedented, and it might never happen again. Bryce Young played that team in 2021 twice in a month. And the first time he played him, He kicked their ass. Alabama beat them 41-24. Bryce was 26 of 44, threw 3 touchdowns, threw for 420 yards. And then in the national championship game that ultimately Georgia got them, Bryce was still good. He completed 35 balls, threw for 370 yards, and threw a touchdown and threw 2 picks. But in that game, unlike the game he destroyed them, his top 2 targets, Jamison Williams and Mechie, were injured. Obviously, Jamison, top 15 pick, and Mechie, a second-round pick with a torn ACL. So Bryce Young has proven, anytime you scout a player in football, if it's a quarterback or a running back or any position, you scout them against the best talent they play. So whether that's teams or if I'm a wide receiver, it's against the corners that are going to get drafted. If I'm a defensive lineman, it's against the tackle or tackles that I play that are going to be NFL players. And if I'm a quarterback, it's the best teams that I play, right? And no player in recent memory has played a team as good, if you're an offensive player, as that 2021 Georgia defense. So when I see there's a lot of negativity and a lot of people questioning Bryce Young, how do you take a quarterback who's 5'10", and honestly who probably weighs closer to 185 than the 200 pounds that he weighed in at the combine? Because he's not really 200 pounds. As a scout told me that was there at the weigh-ins, he looked bloated. He looked like a guy who put on a bunch of fake weight. Of course he did, right? But it's not about the weight. It's like, can the guy play? And the guy can really play. So is he going to get injured? I have no clue. Nobody knows. I heard Steve Keim tell Coward the other day that like they had done studies in Arizona. There's no way to know based on college information whether a guy will stay healthy or get injured once he gets to the pros. And I've talked about this before. We've seen guys that get injured all the time in college, then come to the pros and have no injury problems. Just like we've seen the opposite. Guys who have been healthy their entire career, high school, college, come to the pros and get hurt all the time. No one has a crystal ball. No one knows. And quarterbacks, when you get hit, typically you get injured. Whether you're Russell Wilson, whether you're Peyton Manning, whether you're Tom Brady. If I'm going to hit you and hit you hard, Justin Fields or Justin Herbert, I can injure you. So it's just whether you're small or you're big. Now, in theory, you should be able to take more pounding if you're bigger, for sure. But I watched Bryce Young play that Georgia defense, dominate them, and get peppered and keep getting up. Is Bryce Young going to be a star in the NFL? No one knows. I mean, all I know is that the guy that I watched in college, that shit translates to the NFL. And he proved it, dominating against Georgia. Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love. I want to start with Aaron Rodgers because I saw a headline today. He is going, and he mentioned this when his introductory press conference, and now he's living it. He is going to be with the New York Jets this offseason. In the last several years, he was nowhere to be found in the offseason when it came to the Green Bay Packers and their OTAs, their mini camps. He didn't show. He did not show up. And I know I can speak for myself, and I'm a creature of habit. I can do the same things on a weekly basis. I like to keep my schedule relatively routine. I like eating the same foods. I don't like a lot of change in my life. Though, someone who, hell, I just moved states a year ago. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. For me, it's very healthy. When I create change sometimes in my life, it usually brings benefits for me. And when change has been forced on me, whether I've been fired from a job, whether, broken up with a girl, usually it brings very healthy benefits to me. And I wonder if Aaron Rodgers knew that he just needed to mix it up. Partly himself, right? Like, I need to leave this team, and partly because the Packers wanted to leave him. And look what it's already done, right? Like, he can't not show up in the offseason. Like, that wouldn't work. He needs to be there. But part of it's a little bit easier knowing that, like, you know what? I kind of want to stay in New York this offseason. I'll go to some NHL games. I'll go to Madison Square Garden. I'll hang out with new people. And it'll force me to kind of get out of my comfort zone a little bit. And sometimes, and I think I speak for everybody, it's easy to stay in your comfort zone. Hell, I'm king of that. I love my little comfort zone. But when I force myself to get out of it, and now once I've crossed state lines, I don't have a choice. I have to, a lot of times, do things that I wouldn't say make me uncomfortable, but just are something that I would not do if I still lived in Northern California. And it has brought a lot of benefits to my life, professionally, personally. And I think you see it with Aaron Rodgers, and I saw it with him when I watched his press conference, that like making this change, which I'd say kind of 50-50, forced on him, / he wanted this. I think it's going to bring a lot of healthy benefits to him as a player, right? Because let's face it, last year, a big negative with the Packers is he didn't have Devontae Adams, who he had known for almost a decade. That like it wasn't going to matter whether he was there throwing with him in May and June. Because once they drafted multiple wide receivers and traded Devontae, like he had to get on the same page as Dobbs and Watson. And they didn't get on the same page till it was too late. Well, this year, like there's urgency from the jump. You're on the New York Jets and everyone's watching you. So getting on the same page as Garrett Wilson immediately, getting to know these offensive linemen, getting this team to kind of rally around you is really important. And getting the benefit of doing this stuff in April, in May, and in June is very, very important. Building the foundation of a relationship with someone else that you do not know and have no, previous history with matters. And I think the Jets are going to benefit from kind of this new Aaron Rodgers of a guy that has just gotten out of his comfort zone. Because let's face it, he had kind of been, in the same hamster wheel over and over as the Green Bay Packers quarterback as the last several years. Kind of knew the routine, knew the operation, and knew the players around him. And I think it's going to work. And I think they're going to be good. Obviously, he's got to stay healthy. But if he stays healthy, I think we see a rejuvenated guy. And sometimes when you force change on yourself, you kind of chip on your shoulder is the wrong word. It just adds a little urgency to your life. It just adds a little new motivation. And maybe he needed that. And I think the Jets are going to benefit from it. And I think the players, obviously, the Jets have been missing a quarterback. If they got the Aaron Rodgers version even of last year, the Jets are a wild card team. So I think this is going to be a pretty seamless transition. One thing I've really changed my tune on over the years is like trying to make bold takes on 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round picks. It's pointless because absolutely nobody knows. Nobody knows. Or good players, the Tom Brady's, the Richard Shermans, the George Kittles would never sniff where they go. But at the time, no one knows. Just like in this draft, there's going to be a 5th rounder who becomes a stud. And there's going to be a 1st rounder who stinks. But the 1st round, which in theory should have the most talent every single year, just had a group, and this was pre-COVID, so this was based on 2019, a real college football season, is going to have 12 to 13 guys max have their 5th year option picked up. That means over half the 1st round 3 years ago did not even get to a point where you feel good enough about picking up their 5th year option. Now, some of them, right, Damon Arnett was cut by the Raiders. Henry Ruggs is in jail. Jalen Reagor, different team. Okudah, different team. So some of these players we have known now for months, if not a year, that this was a disaster. And some of them you know right away. Herbert, Burrow, Justin Jefferson, home run. Some of them take a little bit longer. Ayuk. But that is still a number that is well under half the 1st round. So when you look at this draft, and I saw Clark Hunt came out and said that, of course Patrick Mahomes is underpaid. There is no way, even if he was the highest paid player in the league, he would still be underpaid. And I was thinking about it the other day, watching Steph Curry go for 50. There is no amount of money the Warriors could pay Steph Curry that isn't like $200 to $300 million a year, which obviously is not even allowed, that you could say he's properly paid. In the peak of Tiger Woods or the peak of Michael Jordan, there is no amount of money that can come their way that can equal their value to either their league or the PGA Tour, their team. And I also thought about this with the draft. There are really like 4 or 5 players in the league. And in football, it's quarterbacks. In basketball, it's less than a handful of guys. If you don't have one of those guys, you really don't have a shot. The reason the Philadelphia Eagles came so close to winning the Super Bowl was not their roster was elite. It really wasn't. Obviously, that helped. They had a really good roster and a lot of good players. It was because their fucking quarterback played this season like a top 2 or 3 guy. He played like he was Burrow, Mahomes, or Josh Allen. Because if you don't have one of those guys, like Dak Prescott, people think I'm hard on Dak Prescott. I have a lot of respect for Dak Prescott. Great guy. Very, very solid player. And if he's your quarterback, every year you're going to be in the playoff mix. And if you saw this year, you probably win a playoff game. You are not winning a Super Bowl. It's just not happening. If you look at the AFC, if you don't have Mahomes, I'm going to include Josh Allen, even though they've not made it out of the second round the last couple years. And it just feels like they're a little short, but I do think he's good enough. And obviously Burrow, I'm just not taking it that seriously. I think we can add Aaron Rodgers, even though I know they haven't got over the hump. But, you're probably not winning it. Until the 49ers figure out the quarterback situation, they're always going to come up short. It doesn't mean they won't make long runs and win some playoff games, but, it's hard to win the Super Bowl that way. Basically impossible. If you don't have LeBron, if you don't have Steph Curry, if you don't have Giannis, you're not winning it. Hell, you can have Kevin Durant. Every time Kevin Durant is not around Steph Curry, he ain't getting that close. It's such a small thing. So the draft, I love it. You love it. 54 million people over a 3-day span watch the thing. It's fantastic television. But most of these players have little to no impact. And well over half of them will get cut, will be on different teams. And then even the starters, those are replaceable starters. There's a small percentage of huge impact guys, whether it's the first round, and it only diminishes by the round. So when I see Clark Hunt say he's underpaid, of course he is, because there's no amount of money the Chiefs could give Patrick Mahomes that he wouldn't be worth it to them, right? Just like Josh Allen, just like Joe Burrow. Obviously, if Jalen keeps playing like that, his value to the franchise is unquantifiable. It's impossible to quantify what Steph Curry means, not just to the Warriors, but to the NBA. And he was the 7th round. He was the 7th pick in his draft. 3 point guards went ahead of him. James Harden went way ahead of Steph Curry. I think James Harden was the 3rd pick. James Harden and Steph Curry, they're not even the same fucking universe as players. And James Harden's, when all said and done, is going to make $500 million, win an MVP, all these points. They have nothing in common. And James Harden's going to be a Hall of Famer. So the draft, while fun, these players will become really good players. But for the most part, it's does it really matter that much to the overall landscape of the league? Now, if Anthony Richardson becomes a Josh Allen, then the Colts got a shot. And that's what I saw Ballard talking about it. Listen, this might fail. And I talked about it yesterday. If it does, they're all screwed. They're all going to get fired. But if it hits and he becomes a bona fide star, they got a shot. The reason when Lamar's healthy, listen, they haven't got over the hump yet, or even won that many playoff games, but you give him a shot when he's playing at a high level and he's running around, fucking throwing touchdown passes. The defense is playing well. It's intriguing. And honestly, more than likely, he'll never be on that tier. But maybe they're hoping they get his mind back right and he can get him back in the mix. Because right now it's clear in the AFC. 2 guys are head and shoulders above everyone else in Mahomes and then Burrow. And Josh Allen, I would put right in a separate tier, but damn close. And then there's, the Aaron Rodgers, Lamar Jackson. And that depends. Aaron, if he starts winning an MVP, if he were to be the MVP of the Jets this year, not the Jets actual team, but the entire league, you'd be yeah, they'd have as good a chance as any. And you'd be well, the Packers didn't win anything. Well, their defense has been pretty atrocious historically with Aaron Rodgers. So if the Jets defense is good, part of the reason the Chiefs have had some success in the playoffs, their defense plays well. Obviously, Mahomes is an all-time special quarterback, but you got to have a solid defense to go along with a special player. What do the Bengals have? Their defense has been pretty damn good the last couple of years. Fascinating, man. Should be fun.